By the winter of 1776, the American Revolution was hanging on by a thread, and not a thick one. Washington's army was cold, broken, half frozen, and about to disappear when enlistments expired in days. British and Hessian forces were rolling through New Jersey like the war was already over. Morale was in the dirt. Congress had fled Philadelphia, and on paper, the rebellion was dying. And that's when George Washington chose to gamble the entire revolution on one night, one river, and one desperate strike, all on Christmas night. Welcome to our republic.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political band,
sailors and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force.
Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers. Not one small step for man.
Those three hallowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be.
we pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Now, after a string of crushing defeats around New York, Washington's army retreated across New Jersey and finally crossed into Pennsylvania. The British, under William Howe, went into winter quarters. They believed the rebellion would collapse on its own. Washington's problems were severe. His army had shrunk to about 2,400 men. Many enlistments expired at the end of December. Supplies were scarce. Desertion was constant. Confidence was nearly gone. If he did nothing, the war was effectively over. So he chose to attack. The target? Trenton. Across the icy Delaware River sat a town of Trenton, defended by about 1,500 Hessian troops, professional German mercenaries hired by the British. Their commander was Colonel Johann Rall. The Hessians were experienced soldiers, but they believed the Americans were finished. Guards were lax. Christian Christmas celebrations had just ended. Snow and sleet covered the ground, but Washington saw opportunity. What was the plan? Washington's plan was brutally simple and incredibly risky. Cross the Delaware River on the night of December 25th, 1776. March 9 miles through a blizzard, launch a surprise attack at dawn on December 26th, crush the garrison at Trenton, and revive the revolution in one stroke. 3 separate crossings were planned. Only Washington's main force succeeded. The others turned back by ice and storm, which meant Washington would attack with less than half of the force he originally intended. But he went anyway. But the river was choked with ice. Snow and freezing rain lashed at the men. The crossing took place at a place called McConkey's Ferry. Soldiers ferried across in Durham boats, crewed by experienced watermen from Massachusetts. Many men had no boots. Their feet were wrapped in rags, leaving blood in the snow. The last man crossed after 3 a.m. in the morning. And the attack was already behind schedule. The march would be in complete darkness, but still, Washington pressed on. The American column split into 2 divisions under Nathaniel Greene and John Sullivan. They marched through snow, sleet, and darkness towards Trenton, and only 2 soldiers froze to death on the road, and not a single man turned back. And at about 8 a.m., the Americans burst into Trenton. Hessians were completely caught off guard. Many were still asleep. Their formations collapsed under concentrated musket fire and artillery from Henry Knox, and the fight lasted less than an hour. The result? Hessian casualties, 900 captured, 22 killed, and many wounded. American casualties, 2 dead, the 2 from exposure, and only a handful of wounded. Colonel Rall, the Hessian commander, was mortally wounded while trying to rally his men. Washington had taken an entire enemy garrison with almost no losses. And the aftershock was massive. The psychological impact of Trenton was incredible. Desertions in Washington's army stopped. Re-enlistments surged, and militia poured in. Support for independence rebounded across the colonies, and Europeans realized the rebellion might actually survive. And within days, Washington struck again at Princeton, driving the British out of much of New Jersey, and the war was very, very much alive. So why did that crossing matter? Militarily, Trenton was a small battle. Strategically, it saved the revolution. Washington proved the colonial army could still fight. The British could still be surprised, and the rebellion was not finished. Most important of all, it proved the rebellion still had a pulse. And once the colonies saw that Washington could still strike, surrender was no longer an option. On Christmas night, 1776, George Washington crossed a frozen river with a half-starved army, the future of the nation on his shoulders. And he didn't do it with an overwhelming force. He didn't do it with certainty, right? He did it because doing nothing meant surrender. That crossing didn't change the battle. It changed the direction of history for our nation and for the world. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and listen to the show. Remember, history isn't boring, especially when one frozen river stood between defeat and the birth of a new nation, all on Christmas night. See you next time.